All right, so let's get into it. I worked out this morning, you guys, so I had, the pre-workout. So we are talking about transgender client beliefs today. And really, I probably could have named the training something else, but this is what I came up with. Anyways, I'm really excited to break it down, and I want to be extremely clear for the people in the very back of the room that always have something to say. This training is totally based off of my own personal beliefs, my own personal experiences, what I've dealt with in the last 12 months, and what I believe a transgendered person would want based off of my interaction with them. Okay. So do not come for me and say, well, this a transgender person isn't speaking on this, et cetera, et cetera. This is on what I feel their beliefs are, being on the providing end of it and supporting this individual through this transition, if you will. Okay. So this was a whole new experience for me. This is not one where there was no direction, there was no manual, there was no guide on how to do this as a provider. And so my hope is that this helps you either now or in the future, or it may help someone, right? So this is more about the impact that it can make on the individual who's being served, right? If the provider knows better and does better, the individual is going to be served better. In a nutshell, that's what it's about. So I wanted to kind of give some context on that before we dive in. The other thing that I wanted to give some context on is I didn't know all about the different terms and sexual orientation and gender identity. I didn't know about all of that stuff prior to this happening, right? Prior to working with this individual. I knew some things, right? The they, them, he, she, him, her, like all of that stuff, right? I knew some of that, but I didn't know like a deep dive on a lot of this stuff until I was in a situation. So that's kind of the context of the training in a nutshell. If you guys have any questions about this or anything that I'm saying, definitely put it in the comments. And this is a situation where I'm learning too. I don't have all the terms exactly right, but I'm telling you what I know based off of my experience. All right. So if you're new to the group, welcome. Let me do my little quick intro. If you're new to the group, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. There are so many resources and videos, etc. in this group. Use the search bar, and Mahogany is so good at directing people to go search, and she's always given people links and resources. So shout out to Mahogany for helping with that. There's so much information here in the group, and you need to utilize that information, right? Put it to work. Don't let it just be free sitting out there, because you never know. One day you might wake up and it's paid. So let's utilize that and get that rolling and help yourself out a bit. So, you guys, I went on a tangent on my own intro. If you're new to the group, welcome. I have a home and community-based agency. I'm located in Alaska, so I have a couple group homes. I have services outside of my group homes. Those are called community hub services. So if you're wondering, like, what's this community hub she's talking about? That's it. It's a services outside of the group home. There's a plethora of services. There's a variety of services. I won't be able to go into detail on that today, but if you want the mini course, I have that available. And it's a 2-part mini course, so definitely go ahead and send me a DM if that's something that you are interested in. Okay, now that that's out of the way, let's get into it. So as we talk more about, working with transgender clients, there's a couple of things. Really, I think I have like 3 or 4 things on my list, but you have to have the right mindset when you're going into this. For me, I'm just going to tell you guys what happened to me. So the individual was already in my care. They had been in my care for, 3 or 4 months at the time before this came to light. So I had already had the experience of caring for this individual before the whole transgender thing came out. Okay. So I didn't know this individual was even going through any of this when they came into my care. Does that make sense? So I was totally caught off guard. It wasn't like this was part of the support plan or the intake documents or anything like that. So I would be aware of it. I was literally totally caught off guard, and literally got a phone call one day and was like, oh, just so you know, so-and-so wants to go buy this. And so that is how it started to unfold. And I started to be able to peel back the layers of this onion, and trying to figure out, okay, how do I go about this? So one of the first things that I want to talk about and make sure that everybody understands is that you as the provider cannot project your own beliefs onto your client, whether it's a resident, program participant, etc. You cannot project your own beliefs onto that person. It's extremely important, even when you are talking to them. Do not say, well, are you sure? Are you this? Are you, like, you don't need to be swaying anybody with anything. It's so important that you stay neutral and you come from a place of wanting to understand this individual. Because at the end of the day, it's not my life. It is not my life. I hear people tell me like, oh no, I'm Christian. I will only take people who are X, Y, and Z. And that's your preference, right? If that's how you want to run your business, that's how you want to run your business. I'm not like that. I want to serve people, right? I want to serve the individual. And so this is the individual's life. And so it's important to me to help them live their life the way they want to live it. Okay. So the first thing is, do not project your beliefs onto anybody. Okay. And really it goes outside of just, I think this is just a life lesson. Don't project. I think it's just so important. And I see a lot of providers, not necessarily sway. I'm not going to say that, but they kind of come from this place of, oh, I'm a Christian, my background is this, so we do this at my home. But it's like, you need to back up, because this ain't your fucking home. This is not your life. You are not the one receiving care. And so you need to back up and kind of unwind that and take a step back, right? This is not about you trying to change their belief, trying to change what they want to do with their body. You may not agree, because even I had a hard time with some of it, but it's important that you understand it. And the way that I kind of looked at it too was, you know, you're not going to see a physician argue with somebody about their advance directive, right? You're not going to see that. If the documents are there and this is what this person wants for their care, then the physician is going to go along with it, right? Because this is what's in writing. The same thing needs to happen, right? The same thing needs to happen. You need to respect that is that individual's wish and what they want. Now you can argue and say, well, do they have the cognitive availability and function to be able to decide that? Well, we'll get to that later on in this training. But the first thing is, do not project your belief onto anyone, especially an individual who is wanting to have their life set up in a different way. Also, what I learned was about their sexual orientation and their gender identity. I, in my mind, was getting it all confused because of, well, if you look like a female and you're wearing fake nails and makeup and everything else, but you're attracted to this, but you think you're that literally warped my mind. Like, I had a very, very, very hard time with understanding that and trying to figure that out, because the sexual orientation and gender identity to me just rolled all together, and it doesn't. And so you have to kind of educate yourself on that, because it is something that could really confuse you when you are, going through this process with a client, and trying to help them, provide the care for them in the way that they need. Does that make sense? It was really hard for me to be able to do that because I was confusing the two things, right? So that is one thing that you definitely want to kind of sort out. And then take time to understand the individual's wants, right? So for me, because I was crossing, sexual orientation, gender identity, all of these things, like, I had to take a step back and actually ask the individual and talk to them about what they are wanting and what terms they were wanting to be called, who they were attracted to, like all of those things I had to kind of figure out, and had to have the conversation with that individual. Then I had to take that to the care team. Then I had to take it to the home, because there's other residents in the home, and those other residents have to, be told about this whole thing. And it was just kind of like a ripple effect, but it started with me, right? It started with me. So I had to, when I was going to understand what the individual wanted, I had to understand, one, their sexual orientation. Like, were they identifying as a female, a man, a female or a male? Were they wanting to do, hormone therapy? If that was something that they were wanting to do, then we needed to still go to the physician and get, recommendation for counseling so you could do therapy treatment. All of those things had to kind of be worked out and sorted out, but it started with the conversation with the individual. And when I tell you, I was so nervous to have this conversation because I didn't want to say the wrong thing. So what I went into the conversation and said was, this was brought to my attention, and I don't necessarily have all the right words to say to you right now in the right way. So forgive me ahead of time. I'm just trying to figure out what it is that you are wanting so I can help and support you get there. And it just kind of alleviated a lot of the pressure off of me to have the right words to say, because I knew I wasn't going to have the right words to say. And so the individual was able to communicate with me to the best of their abilities about what they wanted. They didn't identify as female or male. They identified as them, they. They were attracted to both sexes. They were attracted to both people, you know? And they did want to do hormone therapy. They wanted a deeper voice. They wanted certain things. And so it was good for me to understand what they wanted, how they wanted to be addressed, and how they wanted to be recognized, right? It's called passing, right? Where the individual is recognized as whatever gender that they identify as. See, it's a lot. So then I had to go to the home and talk to the other residents in the home. And I actually encouraged that individual to talk to their housemates about the situation and how they're wanting to be called. I did not say, oh, you need to go and tell them all of this, you know, all these details. But it was a situation where we did kind of just meet in the living room, and this individual did tell the rest of the house exactly the name they want to be called and how they wanted to be, you know, referenced, like he, him, or them, they. I'm pretty sure it was them, they. And so we all had to get used to changing the way that we worked with this individual. We had to change their name in the back end system, so we weren't calling them the other name. I changed everything so that we were consistent and calling this individual what they wanted to be called. Leading up to me being notified about the change, there were some displays of unhappiness. There were some displays of a little bit of anxiety or distress, and that's what they kind of call I think it's like gender dysmorphia. That, like, it's not like a diagnosed term, like this individual was diagnosed, but when I looked it up, they did kind of meet that, right? They didn't seem happy. They didn't seem, I don't know, they seemed like there was something else on them, that they weren't exactly comfortable. And so when that stress was alleviated and when they finally felt comfortable, you could see their attitude change, right? They changed. They just seemed more happier and lighthearted, and they obviously didn't feel as stressed because they wanted this to be announced, and they just didn't know how to do it. So after that kind of came out, that's where we noticed the difference. I noticed the difference. So from there, it's more so bringing it to the care team, the full care team, addressing it and figuring out how do we support this individual. Obviously, there's doctor's appointments, right? There's doctor's appointments and to see what the physician is going to recommend or who the referral is going to go to. There was some therapy involved. And I will be honest, I didn't go to all of those appointments. The family who was with this individual, they are the ones that went. But there was several appointments. You know, blood work had to be done. This wasn't a thing where an individual just announces something and then all of a sudden they're on hormone therapy and all these changes are being made. I made changes on the level that I could with the care that I was providing, but for the individual to have like the medical care, the physician and all of them had to come up with their own treatment plan to be able to get this individual to where they wanted to be or where they needed to be. The biggest thing that I can take away is that us as providers are there to support and help individuals live the best quality of life that they can possibly live. And if that includes being a different gender or being recognized as, you know, someone else, they, them, or she, her, or he, him, whatever it is, it's our job to be able to help them do that. We might not agree, right? We might not agree, but it's not our life. And I had to really understand that, because I personally did not feel that this individual had the capacity to make some of the decisions that they were making for their life. But at the end of the day, this was not about me. This was about them. And I had to keep that throughout this whole transition and this whole thing. Was it something that I struggled with a little bit? I did. But was it something that I had to check myself on and realize what my role is and what I'm here to do? Absolutely. And it can be hard to do at times. So I'm not going to make it seem like the road was super easy. There was some times where even after work, like I would get off work and I would go home, and after working with this individual for a little bit, like that would be on my mind. Like, am I doing the right thing? And at the end of the day, I was, and I'm 1000% confident in that, because my job was to serve. My job was to help this individual live the best quality of life that they possibly could. And with that came exactly what I did. So I know that roadmap might be a little all over the place, but in terms of supporting somebody that is transgendered or has a different gender identity or sexual orientation or whatever, like, we have to support that in the best way possible. And if you cannot do it, like, be honest about that. Be honest about that, because it's only going to bring down the quality of care that you could provide to this individual when they can go somewhere else, right? They can go somewhere else and be better served. So that's what I have for you guys today. I'm super excited about all of the new providers out there, or the current providers who are adding to their services and pivoting and doing all the amazing things out there. I believe that there are so many different niches, right, within the clients that we serve. There are so many different pockets in there, and you can find that niche. You know what I mean? If you want to work with people who have severe mental health challenges, you can do that. If you want to work with people who are DD but who are transgendered or have a different sexual orientation or gender identity, like, you can do that. There's so many different possibilities, and I don't think you should limit yourself, but I also don't think that you should discriminate either. That's like a big thing too. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. If you are a person who is aspiring to be a provider who wants to get started with their licensed assisted living, group home, or community hab business, definitely hit me up in the DM. Let me know. I would be happy to talk to you about it and to see if the program is going to be a good fit for you. If you know the program is going to be a good fit for you and you would like to enroll, go to www.workwitharianaj.com and apply. So definitely do that if you are wanting to work with me inside the program. Female, how do you decide which home to place a resident for the comfort of both the individual and the other residents in the home? So I think what you're saying is, if a resident is moving in, if you have a gender specific homes, how do you decide which home to place a resident in for comfort? I think that's going to be an interesting answer, because here's the thing. If I put a female in the male home that had these, that had a different gender identity, I would want to, one, make sure the other guardians for the residents in that home were okay with it, right? I would let them know the situation, and then I would move forward from there. I think I'm understanding you right. And the reason why I say that, because if the other guardians aren't accepting of that, I wouldn't move that individual in. Now, this happened to me in our female home, and this individual was already moved in before this happened. And so with that, it was what it was, and we just let the families know. And I mean, it was what it was. Nothing changed. But if it was somebody who was moving in, I would make sure that the guardians and the family members were okay with that. Hope that answers your question. All right, guys. So again, if you want to apply to work with me in the Started Provider program, just go to workwitharianaj.com and apply, and we'll review your application. If you're approved, we will reach out to you. All right, my loves, I will see you same time next week. Bye for now.